My name is Benjamin Button, and my life has been different from others right from the start. I was a poor child, born looking like an old man. My mother died during childbirth, and my father looked at me just once, his eyes filled with fear, as if he were looking at a monster. He picked me up, and without hesitation, abandoned me. I was abandoned at the door of a nursing home, but fortunately, a kind caregiver found me. The doctor examined me and said I had cataracts, arthritis, aging bones, and organs that were failing. All the diseases of the elderly were present in my newborn body. I didn't look like a baby at all. I looked like an old man on the brink of death. The doctor predicted I wouldn't survive a week and suggested giving up treatment. But the infertile caregiver firmly believed that I was a miracle sent by heaven. She adopted me and named me Benjamin. As the newest member of the nursing home, I immediately became the center of attention. Fortunately, the doctor's prediction did not come true. I slowly grew up. At the age of 7, I looked like an 80-year-old man with wrinkles on my face and sparse hair. I longed to run, jump, play, and laugh like other children, but the reality was that I could only sit in a wheelchair with the elderly and spend my childhood like that. Although my illnesses improved, I remained weak and couldn't even walk. Until one day, my mother took me to a church. The priest laid his hands on my head and prayed to the heavens. Everyone encouraged me, and I gritted my teeth, trying with all my might, and finally stood up. But the next second, I fell hard to the ground. Amidst the cries and encouragement from everyone, I didn't give up. And in that moment, a miracle truly happened. Not only did I stand up, but I also learned to walk. In that instant, I saw a glimmer of hope for a normal life. But life did not change because of this. I still, like the elderly, only cared about the weather and the temperature of the bathwater every day. In the nursing home, death was like an old friend. Before long, I would have to attend another funeral and face another farewell. Every time I stood before a tombstone, it seemed as if my own life had already been written. Until I was 12 years old, I met her, the girl who would change my life. She ran toward me, with those bright blue eyes like an angel, and suddenly, they struck my heart. That day, there was an event at the nursing home, and Daisy came to visit her grandmother. We ate together and listened to her grandmother read stories. After I fell asleep, I don't know how much time passed, but someone woke me up. It was Daisy. She had secretly come to find me to play. We crawled under the table and played truth or dare. I gathered my courage, feeling a little shy, and said that I didn't look as old as I appeared. She believed me without hesitation. In her eyes, I was different from everyone else she had met. She reached out her hand, wanting to touch my old face. But at that moment, her grandmother appeared. She scolded Daisy, telling her to go to bed, and shot a disapproving glance at me. I felt deeply sad. At 12, I had already endured far too many strange looks because of my face. I crawled into my mother's arms and cried for a long time. Is reverse aging really a good thing? As time passed, my body underwent tremendous changes. I became younger and younger. My arms grew muscular and hair began to grow on my head. Perhaps because she had raised this miracle, my mother also miraculously became pregnant and gave birth to my sister. She had to devote much of her time and energy to caring for the new life, and I began to feel lost, as if my mother's love was drifting away from me. The next day, I went to the dock alone to clear my mind. I happened to come across a captain looking for sailors, but no one responded. I heard that this captain never paid wages, yet I raised my hand and secured the job. I wanted to experience a different kind of life. On the ship, I took on the dirty and tiring tasks that no one else wanted to do, because in these labors, I felt a long-lost vitality, as if life had been reignited. The captain liked me, this hard-working little old man. He asked me when I'd last been with a woman. I said never. He was stunned, and a hint of pity appeared in his eyes. That night, he unexpectedly paid out of his own pocket and took me to experience my first taste of pleasure. On my way home, I met a strange man. He was especially friendly to me and invited me for a drink, which was my first time drinking alcohol. During our chat, I learned that his name was Button, and he was a well-known wealthy businessman in the area. His wife had died during childbirth, and despite being as rich as a king, he had always lived in loneliness. I didn't know that the man before me was actually my biological father, the one who had abandoned me all those years ago. For all these years, he had been secretly watching me, seeing me grow up in a miracle, and watching me about to embark on my own life. As a father, his feelings were complicated, with both regret and pride. Years passed, and my body grew younger, and the thing I looked forward to most was every weekend, because Daisy would come to the nursing home to visit her grandmother. And she had grown from a little girl into a graceful young woman. One day, I secretly took Daisy onto the ship, and we stood at the bow watching the fog-covered sea. A huge cruise ship slowly passed by, and she looked at me and said those words. Those words planted a seed in my heart. At that moment, a new old lady came to the door. She was holding a dog and elegantly moved into the nursing home. She was very kind to me, not only teaching me how to play the piano, but also teaching me many lessons about life. When I was 18, the old lady passed away, and that was the first time I truly felt the pain of loss in my life. After so many firsts, this day arrived. I packed my bags and said goodbye to everyone. I was finally leaving the nursing home, boarding the ship, to search for my own direction in life. My mother cried and reminded me to take care of myself, and Daisy didn't want us to part. We promised that no matter where I went, I would send her a postcard. And so, I became a sailor, starting my maritime life with the captain. In the blink of an eye, years passed, and Daisy had become an excellent ballet dancer, tall and graceful. I kept my promise and regularly sent her postcards. Until one day, Daisy received my letter, but she no longer smiled, because the letter said I had fallen in love with a woman. Her name was Elizabeth. She was in her 40s, plain-looking but possessed an intellectual beauty. We met at a hotel, and I was attracted to her elegance, and she too was moved by my appearance, which looked like I was in my 70s. She had no idea that I was actually just in my early 20s. We ate, drank, and walked together in the snow. She told me that when she was young, she was a champion swimmer, and her dream was to swim across the English Channel, but she ultimately failed. We talked all night long about dreams, the future, as if there were endless topics to discuss. Then one day, she suddenly disappeared, leaving behind only a note. "It was nice meeting you." Just like that, I was heartbroken. Not long after, World War II broke out, and our ship was requisitioned by the Navy, forcing us into battle. During a patrol, we were struck by a fierce enemy attack, with bullets raining down like hail. How could a small fishing boat withstand that? The boat was riddled with holes, the crew suffered heavy casualties, and even the captain was hit, his life hanging by a thread. I held on to him tightly, urging him to hang on. Before he passed, he told me one thing, a phrase I would never forget. That night, none of the crew survived, and I was the only one left alive. On the battlefield, death is not a natural process, but a sudden and unforeseen end. When I was 26, I returned home, to the retirement home where I had grown up. My mother, now over 60, had aged considerably. My adoptive father had passed away several years earlier. and my sister had grown up as well. As for me, everyone around me was growing old, yet I was growing younger. This mismatched growth filled me with loneliness until Daisy reappeared in front of me. We hadn't seen each other in years, and when we met again, she was astonished by my reverse aging. I, on the other hand, was deeply captivated by her beauty. We locked eyes, and the feelings from our youth were reignited. That night, we had dinner together. At the height of her youth, Daisy spoke non-stop about her experiences in life. I, however, was so absorbed in watching her that I didn't hear a single word. We talked late into the night. Daisy danced for me on an open plaza, graceful and enchanting, so beautiful that I couldn't take my eyes off her. But when she directly expressed her desire to take things further, I refused. It felt too soon, too rash. It wouldn't be fair to her. She left disappointed, and just like that, we missed our chance again. That night, an unexpected visitor arrived at my door, Mr. Button. He was old, slow-moving, and frail. At dinner, I learned that he was seriously ill, and his time was short. He asked me to stay with him, and feeling pity, I agreed and went with him to the factory. But what he said next completely stunned me.
You're my son.
I silently returned home. At first, I was angry, but gradually, I remembered the captain's words. What could I do? I could only let go. After all, he was my only family. On his final journey, only I could accompany him. I carried my father to the seaside, where we quietly watched the sunrise. In that moment of peace and tranquility, he passed away. I gave him a dignified funeral. Then, I inherited my father's business and became a millionaire. I went to New York to surprise Daisy. This was my first time seeing her perform. On stage, she was the most captivating ballet dancer, and at 23, she was in the prime of her youth. I once again found myself spellbound. After the performance, I went backstage to find her, only to discover she had a boyfriend. He was young, full of life, and handsome, while I was just an old man. So many things were left unsaid in my heart, and I could only leave quietly. In the following years, Daisy became America's top ballet dancer, and even became the first American to be invited to perform ballet in the Soviet Union. She blossomed like a flower, until one day, she had a car accident in Paris. I received a letter from one of her friends. I rushed to Paris and went straight to the hospital, where I finally saw her. Her leg was broken, and she would never dance again. When she saw me, she was very surprised. I had grown even younger and more perfect, while she was covered in bruises, and she didn't want me to see her in such a state. When she spoke those words, it seemed like she had exhausted all her strength. I felt helpless and could only turn away. But I didn't leave Paris. I quietly watched over her until I was sure she was safe before silently leaving. After that, I never saw her again until the spring of 10 years later. It was an ordinary afternoon, but one I would never forget. Daisy had finally come out of her pain and returned to the retirement home. We embraced tightly. Other people's lives run parallel, but ours are out of sync. Perhaps 40 was the best age for us. I wouldn't be too old, and she wouldn't be too young. Our lives, ages, appearances, and experiences finally aligned. This time, we didn't hesitate and finally came together. The next day, we set sail, played on the beach together, watched the sunrise and sunset, trying to make up for all the romance we had missed out on. When we returned to the retirement home, we received tragic news. My mother had passed away. I mourned and attended her funeral. I would forever cherish this great mother. Later, I sold my father's mansion and moved into a small apartment with Daisy. We bought no furniture. We ate when we wanted, slept when we wanted, living freely. Daisy reminisced about her past dance career, so I opened a small bar for her. where she could teach children to dance. One day, I saw a familiar face on the TV, Elizabeth. She had finally succeeded in swimming across the English Channel, breaking the world record. I was genuinely happy for her. These days were the happiest of my life, until Daisy announced something. I was going to be a father, but I didn't feel joy, only anxiety. I was terrified, afraid the child would age backward like me. Luckily, when our daughter was born, she was a perfectly normal baby. But as she grew, my worry only deepened. I feared one day I might be the same age as her. I knew clearly that she needed a father, not a playmate. So I left all my wealth to Daisy and chose to leave while our daughter still wouldn't remember me. From then on, no one saw me again until 10 years later. By then, Daisy, almost 60, had just finished a class when she saw a young man at the door. It was me. I looked like a 20-year-old, but inside, I was already old. She had remarried, and her husband seemed like a responsible father. I felt at ease. I didn't know why I came back. Perhaps when you get old, you get nostalgic. This was the last time we met. Many years later, Daisy, now in her 70s, received a call from the retirement home saying there was an unclaimed child who had written her name in his diary. She rushed there, and sure enough, it was me. My God, I had turned into a teenager covered in acne scars, with my mind deteriorated and all my memories lost. She moved into the retirement home and took care of me, never leaving my side. I kept getting smaller, from a teenager to a child. Sometimes I would climb to the roof and say that I seemed to have lived a life, but I had no recollection of it. When I finally became an infant in swaddling clothes, all my aging love and years could only be gently released, and I peacefully moved toward death.